Alrighty, let's see if I'm live. It says I'm live. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Stacey Storino. Welcome back to my channel. This is the Mama Saga, where I'm both a mother and a lawyer by day, but I am also someone who loves to break down things like Marvel movies, the MCU, classic Marvel comic books, because I've loved them since 1986, and of course Disney Plus series, anything that's in the MCU. And because I'm a lawyer, I especially love breaking down She-Hulk stuff, both from the side of a comic book fan and theorist, but also from the side of someone who is a lawyer and actually appreciates a lot of what goes on in this current series. Both from the work-life balance kind of story with an attorney, and then plus, attorney associate dynamics, associate partner dynamics, and of course, the actual lawsuits themselves. Each one of the episodes are pretty much focused on a different type of law or legal case or legal claim. So today we are kind of taking a trip to, a very special boutique area of the law, which has to do with patents, trademarks, and intellectual property. I'm admitted in New York for many years now. I'm not admitted anywhere else. Well, I can go into federal court if I need to, but other than that, so of course we're in California. We're in LA with GLK&H or Goodman, Lieber, Kurtzberg, and Holloway. Mallory Brooke is actually the attorney who's in the driver's seat on behalf of her fellow associate, Jennifer Walters, because she has to help her initially defend, and then they update their litigation plan for another move. But initially, she's defending against the case that Titania and then her company, Titania Worldwide LLC, is bringing against She-Hulk herself for saying trademark infringement. You can't cease and desist using that name because I trademarked it and you don't even have an application in. And even if you did, if I beat you, the initial claim is I own the trademark and you don't have the right to say that you should have it instead. So this is episode 5. We are now midway or more than midway through the 9 episodes that are planned for season 1 of She-Hulk. I've been doing research to see if they're going to bring about a season 2, and it's not out of the question. They definitely have Easter eggs for everything from her being an Avenger to Iron Man to, of course, Daredevil. And we have a very strong poker's tell that we're going to be seeing him probably as early as episode 6. All right, so this episode is called Mean Green and Straight Poured into These Jeans. And of course, we will have a visit to that line a little bit later. As you might, by the way, spoilers, I guess I should say this. This is not a spoiler-free review. Hey, Rami, what's going on? Hey, Mama. Hey, Rami, thank you for joining me. Of course, you've seen this episode, right? What do you think about it? I'm still a fan of the series. I really am, especially as a lawyer and not just a comic book lover. But I should say, spoiler alert, this is not a spoiler. Spoiler. Let me put on my glasses. This is not a spoiler-free review. Okay. Just got to make that clear for anybody coming live or on the replay. Okay, I cry spoilers. Okay, so if you saw episode 3 at the very end, you saw Jennifer Walters getting served by the process server, which is typically what has to happen. Yes, you can serve somebody as an attorney, but if you're the attorney who's going to be trying the case, it probably shouldn't be you serving anybody anything. It was a little dicey when Jennifer tried to serve a cease and desist order last episode. And so go back to last week's live review for me to say why you could do it, but why, as a matter of real life practice, you shouldn't. I will definitely let you guys know if there's anything that I part ways with the writers of this show on. But here I love everything that was done, and I will defend why it's very realistic and why the judge's stance was actually very realistic. But at the end of episode 4, because this is episode 5, Jennifer Walters got served by a process server for the case that is the center of episode 5. So this episode opens up with a ridiculously funny and campy commercial showing the She-Hulk line is being hawked by Titania. She's very clever about it. She's got a full-blown line of skincare and beauty and wellness products. If you're a man, you're kind of like, so what? But if you're a woman, you're dying laughing because it's just so obvious. She's running into the market now that she's trademarked the She-Hulk name, and she's just plugging it into something that really has nothing to do with anything having to do with She-Hulk herself, which I will get back to that later. I will close the loop on that later, because in the motion for summary judgment, that would be the first thing that I would point out as the attorney writing the motion. And I was a motions attorney. I tried cases too, but I won a lot of motions for summary judgment that whether we're in California or New York, that's a trial on paper. If I win that representing the defendant, plaintiff has no case and they're done. We don't go from the liability portion of things to damages. Or if I lose on liability, I can make a motion to truncate things on damages. Here, I love what was handled. There's just an extra nuance that I'm going to layer in later, because skincare, beauty, and wellness products is something that any woman or any entrepreneur can kind of just shovel out right now. And you can have those products created either in your country of origin or abroad and create white label products and just slam a name on it, which is exactly what Titania did. She rushed to the market to trademark the name. Hey, Mike, what's going on? You're going to love this one. Say hi to the wife. Hope all is well. So, Titania was really clever, to be honest with you. Yeah, she's a bad guy. And of course, in the comic book saga for many years, she's been the main foe of She-Hulk. This is actually a very elevated way of making them foes without always having to come to blows. And I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it did. This is very clever. Is Titania a total dirtball about what she's doing? Yes and no, because if She-Hulk didn't think to trademark the name and she does a trademark search, which in America, you can do your own basic trademark search for trademarks here, and it's not a perfect solution, but you can pull up to see if somebody presumptively already has the trademark or not. Has it expired? If it's expired, it's fair game. That's like reliable, but you still have to do the rest of the work to actually claim or reclaim a patent that's gone expired. In this case, She-Hulk never thought to do it. And it makes sense because if you've watched all the episodes till now, She-Hulk / Jennifer Walters' struggle is not with her powers and adapting to this life with new powers and stuff like that. Initial critics of the series were like, it seems too easy. She doesn't have any problems. She's not struggling with fear and loathing about what's happened to her. Her cousin Bruce did all that for her. And as you could see, the family knows each other and they know it and they're in touch with Bruce and they've seen his progression. So she actually could, in real life, you'd be doing this too if you were she and the family was connected and she and Bruce were close. This wouldn't be her main struggle. It's more like identity. She wanted to be a lawyer and she was happy doing it. She doesn't want to be a superhero. It's an identity struggle, which I love because they weave that in very tastefully and in a very complex way to the trademark infringement suit. And where She-Hulk has to come out on the other end of this episode, I think it's good character development. And I think while it may not completely put the head to bed about her struggle with, I really would rather just be She-Hulk attorney at law. Now that somebody's trying to take the name away from her, she now has to go on a bit of a personal odyssey to kind of make peace with it and to reclaim it legally. But I love the skincare, beauty, and wellness products that like Titania dove on, because again, with the white labeling industry, you could get a whole bunch of that stuff made and just put your, trademarkable trade dress on it, your branding, and boom, it's hers. So Titania was smart. That's like one of the fastest ways to like not only get a trademark, but put it into use, because then it makes it more difficult for anybody trying to come in like Jennifer Walters and say, hey, wait, you got the trademark, but in the interests of justice, you shouldn't keep the trademark. It's really mine. So anyway, she's piggybacking, Titania is, on She-Hulk's notoriety. She's slimy, but she's not stupid. And if she's not challenged in court, she also wins, right? So we see Jennifer driving to work, and Titania's She-Hulk line is on a bulletin board. She's even got a promo code, Strength is Beauty, to save 15% off your first offer. On my main channel, Stacy Storino, let me put the name of it down here. I have over 1,600 subs there. I've been a business coach as well as a lawyer. The business coach is a serious side hustle, but I've been teaching people for years, mostly women, but some men too, how to become entrepreneurs, how to sell things online, how to build an email list, and getting people to opt in for a products-based business for a coupon good off their first purchase is something that is like a basic. And so it's great to see the attention to detail, because she's also doing content marketing throughout this episode to hawk her line, which one must do today. But I also love how when you see the ads or any of the social media having to do with the line, it's kind of like smoke and mirrors. She really is, as Jennifer quips later, she really is a snake oil salesperson. It's all about strength is beauty and beauty is strength, and all of this just gobbledygook. There's really nothing behind this line, is really the messaging in this episode, but for the fact that she's piggybacking on She-Hulk and her notoriety right now. So, and it's interesting because that bulletin board, if you see a little bit to the right, if you go back and you look at it again, you see part of the sign for Chateau Marmont, which is like a huge, of course, landmark in California. Oh, Mike says, how many regular people rush out to get trademarks on things that doesn't matter? How much does a trademark cost? I wonder if I should trademark Stan Schill. Stan Schill trademark. That's actually a really good question, Mike. It's funny, but it's also true. Trademarks aren't the cheapest things around to get. The attorneys who do this sort of stuff, whether they're in New York like me or California like GLK and H is, you usually need to be part of a patent bar. So on top of the regular bar that you take, either then and there as you're taking that, it was a 2 full day exam. You could also then go a third day to do a specialty bar, or you can get your regular bar, which lots of folks do because it's hard enough to do that, especially the first try. A lot of lawyers do it multiple times. Thank God I only did it once. I went to the Jacob Javits Center. I sat with over 5,000 people back in 1998. What was it? August of 1998? And I walked out of the Javits Center on day 2, and I was like, God, if I'm meant to be a lawyer, I'm going to pass this thing, because if I don't think I could ever go through that again. There were people on day 1 just getting up out of nowhere and abandoning their exam and saying, forget it, I can't. And I'm like, you're breaking everyone else's concentration. People would walk out crying. People would walk out pissed. So you do need to have a separate bar for patent, intellectual property, and trademark and copyright. That's a whole intellectual property bar. So kudos to Mallory Brooke from GLK&H, because for her to be able to prosecute and or defend such cases, she really does need to have not just the main bar for general practice that covers almost everything. There is the patent bar. And then there's one other separate bar that I can recall, and that's the maritime law bar. So like if you're out at sea and something happens, that's maritime law, because you got a lot of national and international stuff going on. It's actually a bit more complicated than you think. But anyway, so it is a good thing. A trademark isn't cheap because a patent lawyer isn't cheap. It's more expensive for them to get that bar. The fees can be higher to file things. You do have to do a trademark search, which Titania's attorneys did. That's not an issue in this case, whether or not Jen even thought to trademark the name She-Hulk. Not everything is trademarkable or copyrightable either, believe it or not. Like my family has the business Joe's Dairy Bar and Grill. That's another YouTube channel. I think I linked both of them to this channel recently. The Stacy Storino main channel and then the Joe's Dairy Bar and Grill channel. We went to go trademark the name Joe's Dairy Bar and Grill. And it was just general enough that the attorney was like, nah, you can't do that. But She-Hulk is a very much more unusual thing. Like, you can't trademark the word the or bar or the bar or Joe's or anything like that. That stuff is like, out into the regular, human discourse and discussion. But something that's more unique, like She-Hulk or even Titania, yeah, those are things that are definitely trademarkable. So not everything is, but a lot of things can be. But yeah, once you own that trademark, what can often happen is that someone will approach you. They may sue you also to get the ball rolling and say, hey, that trademark should be mine. And maybe they have a really good case and maybe they don't. But, a lot of times these things can settle out and then you just do transactional stuff to change the trademark and to push it over to somebody else or allow for them to use it until the time of its expiry. And then they can then apply to officially 100% have the trademark itself. I was curious to see if GLK&H was going to go sit down and make a deal with Titania, or at least make an offer to her, because she's clearly an entrepreneur and she's a smart one. And see whether or not they would pay for it, because given the conversation that Holden Holloway had with Jennifer later on in this episode, I mean, I'll talk about it more when I get there, but, as a business decision, they might have just approached her and said, She-Hulk is the face and the name that is running our superhuman law division. And if she can't use that name, it's going to make it harder for us to market. So, it's just a business decision. We'll pay you to get the trademark or to get legal use of it. And then upon its expiry, we pay for the trademark. Is patented and trademark the same thing? No, that's a really great question. Oh, by the way, everybody, I tend to do this with my live streams and occasionally in my edited videos too, because we have those during the week. Also, if you're new to me, live or on the replay, please subscribe. You don't often get an attorney giving you breakdowns of things, not just She-Hulk, but like other things too. Daredevil, when he comes out with his Born Again series in another, year or two from now, I'll be happy to break down what he does in court. In fact, I'm kind of tempted to go back and look at some of his old stuff that's now come over to Disney Plus to do breakdowns of any positions he takes in court too. But I digress. Mike has an excellent question. Patent and trademark is not the same thing. I will say my disclaimer now. This is legal issue spotting, not legal advice. I know Mike knows this, but for anybody else, even Rami knows this by now. So in a general, broad brushstroke way, no, those are two separate categories of rights. Patents tend to be plans, blueprints, ways of creating things, ways of doing things, special formulae, very unique. Recipes for food is tricky, but recipes and or formulae for like chemical compounds, certain things like that, those can be patented. Those plans can be protected so that no one else can use them. And if they're accidentally using them, you can bring an enforcement proceeding to say, hey, I've got the patent. And you may or may not have known that I did, but you need to cease and desist doing things this way, using this formula or these formulae, etc. That's more of a process. Trademark is more for a name, not just a personal name or a pseudonym or pseudonym like She-Hulk. It can be for the name of a business, the name of a franchise, right? So that's just very broad brushstroke, the difference between the two, but that's an excellent question. So all that Titania is worried about is protecting the name and the branding that she's now married to the name, and then anything that she wants to throw under the umbrella of what Titania Worldwide LLC does with She-Hulk. As it turns out later, from what the judge says in her decision, Titania, again, very smart entrepreneur. She's apparently got multiple corporate entities and or subsidiaries of the main parent company that is Titania. Titania Worldwide LLC may very well have been a limited liability company that she created just to basically be the umbrella under which the She-Hulk line runs. That's very intelligent for her to do. So she's not a dummy, and or she has very good attorneys protecting her interests. So now we go to Jennifer's home in the new scene. She's eating, and her cousin Chet, who is an idiot, comes in with boxes of goods that come from the She-Hulk line. He doesn't know any better, which actually he would have been a really good witness too in the trial. They didn't use him. If I remember, or somebody remind me, I'll tell you why. But he would have actually been a good witness to call on Jennifer's behalf, because he mistook that line as belonging to her, because she's already been out in the public discourse, as it turned out, thankfully before Titania filed for the trademark for She-Hulk. So the public knew and understood who She-Hulk was. So now if you've got products that say She-Hulk on them, you're going to presume that Jennifer Walters and or the She-Hulk herself, that's her line. These things belong to her. So when Chet came into Jennifer's house, he barges in because he's just a doofus. We've already established that. And he says he's trying to support her business venture. Well, from the outside looking in, he has no idea that this isn't her business venture, right? But he's asking her to autograph these boxes because he's going to resell them. And she's like, I'm not going to do that for you. And then he scolds her, all entitled, saying he's only trying to support her business venture. But, he really just wants her to support him with his bootleg thing, because he's buying stuff and trying to resell them and saying they are resellable once I get the autograph on it, because they're really buying things for the value of the autograph. And then the product that got autographed is piggybacked on there. That's clever, because as an attorney, I've seen stuff like that happen. People can buy shoes from Nike. If they try to just resell them at the current value or higher, Nike can have a very successful lawsuit against them if they're flipping it on eBay or wherever else. If they're selling them for way undervalued because they're used, they tend to be hands off with that. But if people get autographs on things, or they change up the look a little, they kind of put some artwork on it, then they're saying the product actually piggybacks on the autograph and or the artistic work that I made them into, so I'm allowed to resell them that way. So that's really clever. That's kind of what Chet's doing. But if he doesn't have a license or he doesn't have a business entity, he could still get busted for that. But, of course, it shows the oftentimes millennial type of entitlement. I'm helping you. But meanwhile, she autographed these things, especially if he didn't pay her or give her a cut. He just wants her to help him. Guess his pay as a manager at Best Buy is not that lucrative after all. Mike said, wonder if Iron Man patented the way he made his stuff in case of those cheap imitations. I bet you that he did. He definitely often had in the comic book saga, and I want to say references were made to lawyers and paperwork, definitely by Iron Man 2. Yeah, when he was trying to get Pepper to be the CEO, and here's all the papers. He definitely, as lawyers, most smart business people do. Titania may be dopey, but she's not a dumb business person. So I'm sure that he had his methods and certain plans and products and blueprints and stuff, like all the marks for all of his suits. Those must all be patented. So if we do have a version of Iron Man returning, and you guys know I have definitely said during lives and in edited videos that we have so many Easter eggs as of the first episode of Hulk, and basically every episode since, we've had one to multiple Easter eggs that show us that Iron Man, one way or another, is returning to the MCU. I do want to do a specific video giving you more of my thoughts on that, not just regurgitating the things I've already said on the channel, but also walking you through why I feel they really need to do it. And it's not going to be during phase 4. That'll be over once we have Wakanda Forever, and maybe the Christmas special for Guardians of the Galaxy, that's going to be, so like the end of this year is pretty much the end of phase 4, and then Quantum Media kicks off phase 5. So all of phase 4 is basically a lot of table setting, introductions, and teases to get us into phases 5 and 6 proper of the multiverse saga. But I think that once Iron Wars come out, and if they do have a second season of She-Hulk, that would be an excellent episode for Pepper Potts to come out as CEO and ask on behalf of the company, whatever bad guys are stealing suits and processes that they should, they or any companies or any personal or professional holdings they have be tapped for damages for illegally using, because they stole Tony's plans, his suits and stuff. I think Justin Hammer is going to be the main big bad for Armor Wars, and then he's basically going to beg, borrow, steal, and pay for people to grab Stark Tech, and then he'll misappropriate them. So then Mike, thank you for all these great questions and stuff. He said, how did that cousin get all those products? How can he afford that? Wonder how he got rid of them. I wonder. Those are great questions too. They are really expensive things. It is a fair question to ask because he is a manager at Best Buy. So retail managers aren't paid minimum wage or minimum wage warmed over. My mother's been working in retail for decades. And so those managers can be paid a tidy sum. He only did recently just get promoted, but it seems like his dad and his girlfriend like kiss his butt until it's numb. So they might have thrown him some money so that they could get a cut or see their son be really successful in his business venture. So I bet you that's how he got the funding between one or both of those things. In terms of how he gets rid of them in the credit scene, some of the credits, some of the scenes as they roll the credits are the same from episode to episode, and some change out. So there was one where you saw him selling all of that stuff out of the back of his truck, which was hilarious. So my guess is he doesn't have like legal compliance and tax set up to have a business. So like if he did and that stuff was autographed, he could flip it and in one sense be legit. But if he didn't set up housekeeping as a business and he's just pocketing cash, and obviously he's not legit. But she didn't end up signing those things. So he's totally not legit. He's been an idiot since moment one. So he's great comedic relief, but it's also kind of like a commentary on how some people can be, right? So he thinks nothing of asking his cousin to autograph these things. He mentions nothing about paying her for it. He just wants to up the resale value and flip these things. And that's typically a tasteless thing to do. So Jen explains the circumstances. Okay, it's not her line. She has nothing to do with it. Titania got to the trademark first. So Chet does the typical, and this is me as an attorney telling you this stuff, take this in the best possible spirit, guys, both live and on the replay. Attorneys hate it when lay people sit there and they play, instead of armchair quarterback, they play armchair lawyer. Can't stand it. Because he's like, and he did kind of what the process server did to her at the end of episode 4. Well, she got to the trademark first, so she wins. It's presumptive in the law that Titania could win, but there are ways to attack and assail her trademark so that basically she can lose the rights to it entirely. And I don't want to spoil it. Well, I did cry spoilers. So obviously she loses everybody, but why she loses is legit. The one person I thought they were going to bring in as an additional witness was the cousin, because the cousin's like, I'm her cousin. You think I would know, but I didn't. I didn't know that this wasn't my cousin's stuff until I brought her some of it, asked her about it, and then she's telling me no. Because only ever have I seen my cousin to my family and out in public say She-Hulk, I am She-Hulk, I identify as She-Hulk. That name, that pseudonym is mine. He could have said, but you know what? Now that I think about it, Mallory might have decided not to use him because she did have multiple non-party witnesses that made her case for her. And this is Jennifer Walters' cousin, not Bruce Banner. He would have been a great cousin to walk into court. Of course, we know he's out in outer space, probably on his way to Sakaar, which is why Mallory Brooke did not call Bruce in. But she did reference him, and definitely the judge knew who Hulk was, and she did make a good point there. But Chet's an idiot, and they might have said it's too many family members testifying, and that's kind of self-serving. And there have been decisions in New York State courts that I've seen that say that self-serving testimony without anything more in terms of evidence to buttress or support it is just going to be discarded in its entirety. So if it's just Jen's self-serving testimony, that's obvious. If she doesn't have any evidence to back her stuff up, no matter what her claim is, it'll get dismissed. But then you have, I have to laugh. But then you might have an idiot like Chet testifying, and they could think that he just got propped up to testify for her. So testimony without anything else supporting it is self-serving or self-serving to a relative. It still is likely going to get dismissed or not seem as probative by the court to overcome a question of fact, or to prove that there are no questions of fact. We should just settle this now, or Your Honor should make a decision, as they call it, sua sponte, or from the on your own auspices, or from the bench. They could do it. So, to have an idiot like Chet say to her, well, Jen, the first person that gets the trademark owns the trademark. Yes, but it can be no. Okay, it's not that simple. And Jennifer screaming into her pillow because every layperson thinks they can play armchair layperson, and this stuff is often way more nuanced than you think, and this episode does unpack a lot of that as we go. So we do a scene change, which is really the logo. Normally around now you would see She-Hulk Attorney at Law play out, and it's been the same colors for the logo. Once they played with it, Attorney at Law, and they flipped it on the bottom and it said Attorney for Hire. But then otherwise, it's been the standard She-Hulk Attorney at Law with the logo and the colors being the same. Here, as we go into the next scene change, I love that the logo is spruced up and changed to match the Titania branding. It's just hysterical and clever. Another scene change. We are at the She-Hulk product line official launch event and public meet and greet. Now, the trademark issue aside, again, Titania is a very smart entrepreneur for doing this. This is typically true to form of what you'll do. And so they're walking through Jen and Nikki, her best friend and paralegal, and they're looking at everything. Everything's expensive. There's a snake venom lip plumper, and Jennifer Snipes, she's literally selling snake oil. Well, yes, she is, okay? But you would be surprised, because I've done entrepreneurial coaching under my main channel, Stacy Storino. I have a lot of people who will just get white labels for everything from supplements to powder form supplements, pill form supplements, makeup, skincare, all sorts of products that they'll get typically from overseas, not always. And then they'll just throw their branding on it, and bada boom, they've got a product line, which is exactly what Titania did, right? So is she a snake oil salesperson? Yes, but again, a very smart entrepreneur. And right now, presumptively, the trademark is hers in the eyes of the law because she got there first, but that's not that simple. So I love how we get to judge early and how she handles things, because it is very legitimate. I have to tell you, there's a lot of attention to detail, that the writers and the showrunners have put into this whole show. So Jennifer is plain dressed and plain faced at this meet and greet, which becomes an issue too. Nikki is not. Of course, she's high fashion and fully made up. Jen doesn't understand the difference between toner, serum, and cream, but Nikki's like, there's totally a difference. It's completely different. And you can see that this is not Jen's world. Yes, it makes the point for the storytelling we've done up until now, because she's not as glamorous as the She-Hulk is, and it's an identity struggle. It's not a struggle with her powers and mastering them. She got the crash course from Bruce Banner. but it's her struggle with her identity, sure. But also it makes the point that this whole line has nothing to do with She-Hulk and who she's been as a superhero or as a lawyer for the superhero human law division of GLK&H. That's important because that's something that Mallory Brooke could have pointed out in her written motion practice that we get to later on in this episode. It's not the She-Hulk's world, okay? That should play into how this case is litigated in front of Judge Early. Jen cuts to the head of the line to scold Titania, and I love how Titania is like, I'm so sorry, little child, but the line starts back there. Because, like, there's such a huge dichotomy and difference between who Jennifer Walters is physically and otherwise and who She-Hulk is. Titania didn't even recognize her. So then there's a scene change again. They're at work. She-Hulk's in front of her partner. Oh no, we're not there yet. She-Hulk's in her office and she's complaining. And Nikki points out, all along you've said you didn't like this name anyway. Why are you this upset now? And Jennifer's like, well, that's what the people decided to call me. And the people named me. But you can see that she's still struggling. She'd rather just be a plain old attorney. She'd rather just be known by her birth name. She goes, I'm still Jennifer Walters' attorney. She-Hulk is something that's just happened to me. But again, when Titania tries to take the name away from her, we go through this whole odyssey of maybe finally she's like, no, I'm fighting back. I want the name. And she does list out all the benefits of being a Hulk. So it shows that she's self-aware and she's appreciative of it. But then just still claims that she doesn't like the name anyway because she's still not 100% ready to accept both Jennifer Walters and She-Hulk. She does mention as one of the benefits, the benefit of being able to walk around at night with headphones on without being afraid of being attacked, which if you're not a female, you'd be like, what? But it's a blink and you miss it sort of reference anyway. But a lot of women are just like, I couldn't go walking around at night and or with headphones on. If someone attacks me, I need to hear them coming, right? She-Hulk doesn't care. Remember what happened to her at the end of episode 2 when the wrecking crew attacked her? She was like, whatever. So then Nikki's sitting at her desk outside of Jennifer's office. She's looking at Titania's line and wishing she could afford it, which is hilarious. Because again, it shows that Titania she may be a dope in some senses, but she's a very smart public figure. She's a very smart entrepreneur. She's a very smart influencer. So Anthony Pugliese comes out and asks Nikki to stand in line with him and we get to yet another reference to another Iron Man Easter egg for the Iron Man 3 sneakers. They're pushing Iron Man a lot. I don't want to get into why I feel they need to do it here. I do think he's coming back, whether RDJ shows up as him or not ever again, or how they might handle different versions of Iron Man and why they kind of really need him there, as especially by the time we're well into phase 6. I'm going to have a separate video, a pre-edited video, basically saying I knew it and I told y'all. Hey, Mike, what's going on? Morning, Mama. What's up? So far, really good legal breakdown going on here. I'm setting everybody up to go in front of Judge Early and why I felt that their application and the way they handled it and the evidence that both sides presented was more than fair. So it's interesting how Anthony Pugliese tells her he wants 2 sets and it's only one Iron Man 3 per person. And he goes, 1 to rock, 1 to stock. I will say this much right now. I've said all along, and even Mike knows because he's been in and out of these lives too. He's commented, and thank you guys for subscribing, liking, commenting. The more you do that, the more this is pushed out while I'm live on my live streams. And also the replay gets pushed out a bit more too. First to my current subscribers, and I'm almost at 120 now. Woo-woo. and then also to anybody who should be watching this. So you really give me a big help when you thumbs up, when you subscribe. If you haven't, you click the bell notifications and you comment. Ask me questions that you want. I can do legal issue spotting. Of course, I can't do legal advice. So it's interesting how the Easter egg is yet again put out in front of us about Iron Man. I also think it's not a mistake given my theory so far about his reoccurrence and how I think they're going to handle it too, because we're in the multiverse saga. All I'll say is when Anthony Puglisi talks about we need two for the Iron Man product, one to rock, one to stock. Sure, there are a lot of sneakerheads, as they call them, that collect designer shoes, and they'll have one just to stock and look at in their collection, all pristine. Don't laugh. How many people collect these Funko Pops? I love She-Hulk, and my husband got this because she was always my favorite female character / Avenger, because I just liked her and her attitude, but also she's an attorney like me. And believe me, yes, there were times that I wanted to Hulk out in court, but I didn't, because it's not how you win cases. Anyway, the one to rock and the one to stock, I do think we're going to have a version of Iron Man and then a new version of Iron Man. I will say that. So he also mentions the pop culture term drip broker, which killed me. I thought that was so funny. He's got a drip broker who can hook you up with anything you want, superhero fashion wise. So the Nikki is very smart, good best friend, good loyal paralegal, good supporter of Jen. She goes, can the drip broker hook Jennifer up with custom size clothing? And so that becomes important, not only for She-Hulk, and we do eventually get into her comic book accurate costume or outfit, but of course that leads to the Easter egg and definitely the direct loop that gets opened and I'm sure closed by episode 6, where we get into Daredevil and we see him in his classic gold costume, which is awesome, from the Silver Age, no less. My goodness. Meanwhile, Jen, of course, is rubbernecking in her office. She's watching Titania. She's watching Titania talk about her She-Hulk line, and she's reassuring us with her fourth wall break that she's over it. She's totally over it. She's not. So then we go to the drip broker in a bubble cafe or, bubble tea cafe. Anthony Puglisi's connection is Alonzo, and eventually they get put in the back of the bubble tea place, and they're just seeing cheap knockoff Avengers stuff, Avengers for screen prints and stuff. This is kind of real life, and this is how we get into product lines, white label product lines with trademarks and trade dress thrown on them. And then you see the people who are just flying completely under the radar. So you have folks like Chet that just buy and try to make something unique and flip it, like with the autographs, like I said. And then you've got people that don't even try to be Chet, and they're actually kind of under Chet on the food train. And we're just doing rip-off stuff that there's really no defense for at all. So Nikki says we don't want bootleg stuff. We want custom-made superhero clothing. And Pug's like, if you're not the guy, then who is the guy? But they have to buy merch in order for him to do the hookup, because I guess Alonzo's no longer part of the pipeline. And so they go to meet the actual merch guy, whose name is Luke. I do not think that this is a, rebooted version of Luke Cage, by the way. Mike says, interesting that the characters try to call She-Hulk an Avenger when the Avengers don't exist at the present time, per Kevin Feige. I agree with that. And that's true. Right about now, Nikki tries to also get them slid in and better treatment by saying, the client that we're trying to get hooked up here is an Avenger. That's true. Kevin Feige said there isn't currently a line of Avengers. Well, there's not, because who died, who's super old and hanging out on the moon, and stuff like that. Even Nick Fury has been hanging out elsewhere. The Secret Invasions whole miniseries coming out next year is going to pull him back into things actively. But, we really don't officially have an Avengers team. And you can see that they're slowly laying the groundwork for the young Avengers, but apparently they're not trotting them out immediately either. But I think it's an Easter egg to show that the Avengers are going to come back. Well, no, duh, because you got Kang War and the whole Avengers two-parters that's supposed to be coming out in another, 2 years? But allegedly the same year. Now, if there's no delays, there's going to be a couple of months between the two of them, and I think that's awesome. But if there are delays, it wouldn't shock me either if they pushed the second one, Secret Wars, to the next year. But I also think they're trying to give breathing room for the Thunderbolts. So this is a lot of long-term planning. I'm very impressed. A lot of nuanced planning for the next 3-4 years. So they want the Thunderbolts to become even more of a thing. And I'll do a separate live stream and a separate edited video for the Thunderbolts and where I think Zemo factors into everything, because I love Zemo as a bad guy. I love it. So I do think they're trying to keep some surprises for the public. It's hard. You have a bunch of people like me trying to break stuff down. You folks scouring every possible, angle for everything. Everybody's trying to figure everything out, who's leaking stuff. So it's rough. They do want to keep some pleasant surprises for us. So yeah, they do try to name drop the Avengers, which kind of works too. They get a 15-minute consultation that will be set up. So then we do a scene change. Jennifer's with her partner, Holden Holloway. The way he handled this is important on two levels. He said to her, "Why did I pass a billboard having to do with a She-Hulk booty boost smoothie?" He has the right to ask this question. He does. And Jen starts to explain herself, and she's really doing the personal end of things. He does have the right to kind of say, that's not what I'm asking you about. That's not my concern. Because it's not. They're not personal friends here. This is a professional relationship, okay? And this is a very, as you might imagine, conservative business, even in a post-2020 world where we are, as lawyers, doing more stuff virtually than we've ever done before. This is still a very tight corporate culture, and she's kind of breaking form with him, which isn't appropriate. I'm sorry. It's not. The way he handles it shows that he still has a great deal of respect for her, because he's not being all bunch of drama, blowing up. What are you doing? Why did you allow this to happen? Why didn't you come to me and put me wise? Why do I have to find out about this on a bulletin board? He is being tasteful. He is making genuine points. And he said the fact that GLK&H made She-Hulk herself the face of the Superhuman Law Division, now we have booty juice and, another white label thing and skincare lines and stuff. Titania is cheapening what we're trying to do here. We don't want to associate with this stuff. Of course they don't. Now we find ourselves in the middle of a frivolous lawsuit. And his concern is that no one's going, first of all, his concern is it's mucking up the classy thing that we're doing in terms of our marketing, our branding, and our business, which is true. And he says also, and this is very true too, no one hires a firm that can't handle its own messes. Now, if you're not a lawyer, he does seem cold. But I'm a lawyer, and I'm going to tell you on both fronts that I just explained, he's right, and I think he handled it very even-keeled and very fair, which the Holden Holloway character really was in the comic book saga. So this is a very fair and accurate callback to his character in the comic book series. And he is at times supportive of Jennifer, too, even when she gets into cosmic law. He encourages her to do that and to be part of the magistrati, but I digress. So she says, I'm going to fix this, sir. She thinks she's just going to represent herself. And he's like, no, you won't. And he's right. She's sent off to Mallory Brooke, who's very cold and very pissed. And she says, at least you knew not to represent yourself. But she thought she could. So that's kind of funny in and of itself. And then Mallory's all very stiff-backed and says, I'm letting you know that I'm taking this on as a professional courtesy. After that, we are not colleagues. To be fair, Mallory's been with the firm obviously far longer than Jennifer has. And even though it makes sense that Jennifer gets the corner office because she's a rainmaker, remember they signed Megan Thee Stallion, she's signed Wong, she's bringing in folks, she's handling stuff great as she goes. It's not that she doesn't deserve working at GLK&H. It's not that she doesn't deserve, especially because she's a public figure drawing work in the way Holden Holloway wanted. And she is pulling her weight at the firm. So she gets the corner office, but she skipped over Mallory. So if you think Mallory's just being mean because she's just some mean Viper lady, she's not. If I were Mallory, it would take a lot of restraint not to have my frustrations bubble over. Firms do not have corner offices by the scads. And she's got a nice setup, and it's not a small corner office. And since she's leading the division, she's probably being paid either just as much as Mallory is, if not more. And yet Mallory's been there, and they built at least some of their practice on her back. So I can understand the personal dynamics, because it's like, I've been here, and yeah, they may still rely on me, and yeah, I'm part of this team, but you're my boss? Ugh. So then she asks a very fair question. Why didn't you trademark your pseudonym or pseudonym? And so Jennifer said, why would I? But she makes the dopey, example. Did Dr. Strange have to trademark his name? While theoretically it seems like a good point, and Mallory says, but he's using his own name. And you don't have to trademark that when you've had it at birth, or you shouldn't have to anyway. So then she shows her the screen with Titania having the big floppy hat and the ridiculous influencer glasses. And she's like, this is the person who legally outmaneuvered you. Oh my goodness. So, and you can also tell Jennifer's not an idiot. Yes, she's in the thick of things, and we don't tend to see things clearly when we are, and it's our own emotional red tape, but she's also not, she clearly doesn't practice intellectual property, whether she has that separate bar or not. That's not her wheelhouse. It's clearly Mallory Brooks' wheelhouse, or she would have given a better example. Like the kernel of the idea of what Jennifer tried to say was true about Dr. Strange, but Dr. Stephen Strange is his name. Okay. So of course, I agree with Mallory Brooks' litigation plan. She says we have to show strength by countersuing. And we need to establish that you were using the name in a professional capacity before the trademark date, where the filing date they can look at, but then the approval date is the most important date. So the filing date might, depending upon the facts and circumstances, toll anybody else from successfully filing. The approval or the grant date for the trademark is often the ironclad date that they use. So they have to prove that everything that happened up to the application and then the approval of the trademark shows that in the interests of justice, the approval should be rescinded, and Titania shouldn't be allowed to own the trademark, use the trademark, and then profit as she is commercially off the marketing on a presence that was already established in the marketplace. Now, yes, Jen wasn't trying to be a direct competitor, with like booty juice or like skincare lines, or, she's not running a products-based business, but the marketplace could also be broadened to show the general marketplace of humanity. It's a little bit of a weaker argument, but otherwise, I think her litigation plan is perfect. You don't have to file your own separate lawsuit to say, no, that is my trademark, or it should be. Titania did get the ball rolling by serving them first. She probably brought in GLK&H separately if she didn't do it in the same complaint. She can then merge complaints and have all the parties in one complaint. That's what Titania could do. She could make a motion to enlarge her lawsuit to bring them in and to get additional time to serve GLK&H. I don't recall. This is my first viewing. Remember, I come in here pretty raw. I don't recall in the complaint last time anybody other than Jen Walters being sued. I could be wrong, but what I just said would be true. But just because you're getting sued doesn't mean that you can't countersue, doesn't mean that you have to file a separate lawsuit. You can just piggyback off someone else's complaint. So countersuing and making either a motion to dismiss the complaint or in their case, a motion for summary judgment is smart. Now, motion to dismiss the complaint is exactly what it sounds like. And if you're not looking for any additional relief, that could be fine. And usually when you're trying to make an appearance without interposing an answer legally, and or the case is super young, a motion to dismiss a complaint might be fine. However, you would always have to do a motion for summary judgment, where if you're the defendant, yes, one of the causes of action that you're seeking for relief for in the courts would be please dismiss the complaint. Titania shouldn't be suing us. But since they're seeking additional relief, a motion for summary judgment is more proper in the litigation plan. But that's what Mallory Brooke is doing. She's not wasting time and money on a separate lawsuit and then we'll try to merge them. She doesn't have to. In this case, it is proper to countersue. So you don't just come in and answer and deny the complaint in whole or in part. You can also say, and now I am a cross plaintiff. I'm cross moving, not just to dismiss the case, but to also get relief. Mike says, wonder if Captain America has trademarked Iron Man, Spider-Man, Ant-Man, Wasp, Black Panther, Captain Marvel, and more. Seems like they could use those storylines as well. They definitely could. If there's another season, you could have so many seasons just like you had for Ally McBeal or for Law and Order. You could do this as long as the public likes it and it's profitable. They could run this whether the Avengers come back, which they will, or whenever the Avengers could come back, I should say. And whether She-Hulk is officially a full-time or a part-time member of them or not, I think it would be very smart. You could have A, B, C, and D listers coming in and having claims and cases. For the GLK&H trailer reaction video that I did, if you haven't seen it and you haven't subscribed, make sure you do, y'all. But also go back and take a look at that video because there were certain kind of hints that they put out about two Avengers in there, and or fact patterns having to do with Avengers like those, besides the Hulk, one of them being Thor, and another one being a potential claim Ant-Man's gone in this current timeline, but his estate could bring through his wife and the company's CEO, Pepper Potts. So it's like there's so many different legit back patterns that whether they hinted at and they have plans to pay off or just possibilities, there's so many cool things that they could do. I love it. So, of course, Mallory Brooke continues to hammer home that Jen is just dressing like in a man suit, like a woman that gave up. She says, if you're going to be my client, you have to dress like you respect yourself and not like a football player pleading no contest to a DUI. Look, I know given the facts and circumstances of the shape shifting and the different dimensions of the body size, Jen's having a hard time finding stuff that'll work. But, it's hard to be passed over by someone that's also not dressing for success. So I understand why Mallory would throw that zinger in there. It's kind of legit, although it's mean. And then also this further plays into Luke and then the Easter egg at the end where we know that by episode 6, we're going to see Daredevil. Sorry, guys. Don't mean to take a sip on you there. So the next scene, we're in the court. We're in front of Judge Early. Love how as they're walking into court, Titania's attorney is using her camera to create content for her about the court case. Again, as goofy and campy as it seems when you're not an entrepreneur, when you are one, like I am, because I'm self-employed for years now, 17 and a half years I worked for bigger firms, and then I spun out on my own because I wanted to have a family and be around for my kid. But besides that, I'm also a business coach on the Stacey Storino channel, and I coach a lot of women, a lot of older women, to second act or to transition into being entrepreneurs or side hustle, at least on it. And content marketing is very key. So I do have to give Titania credit. She's not missing an opportunity to document as an influencer and as a brand leader. Mike says, you bring up a good point. I've been thinking about this. They should do a second season with She-Hulk. I was asked what other projects She-Hulk would end up in other than Secret Wars. Just like with the comic book sagas, the more classic comic book sagas, of course she had several versions of her own comic. The Dan Slott one was the best run for her, and I think did her the best justice. I guess pun intended. Of course, she ran with the Avengers. She also ran with the Fantastic Four. So once they're in, she could come in and be a part of that, let alone any other quick cameos that she could do in anybody else's Disney Plus series or their movies. Excuse me. But I do think really they should have multiple seasons of hers. I know I'm biased because she's my favorite female, superhero. But still, I think it's very, very clever because you can introduce and reintroduce characters, you can tease storylines, and I really stand strong with what I said last week. She actually brought in Mephisto. After the first season of Loki, where they bring in a supreme big bad for the whole MCU, let alone phases 4, 5, and 6, which is, it was Immortus / She Who Remains, but they introduced Kang. People were kind of poo-pooing the possibility of how important can these Disney Plus series be. Pretty darn important because Loki schooled you if nothing else did. And so bringing in Mephisto now, who is another supreme and vicious big bad, Thanos pales in comparison to these guys because these guys don't care at all. The devil totally doesn't. And, maybe Immortus, He Who Remains, that incarnation of Kang is more thoughtful and more circumspect. The other versions are totally not. At least Thanos had a point and a purpose, and in his own twisted way meant well, but was brutal about how he went about effectuating his plans. I've said it before in multiple videos, especially pre-edited ones. Ant-Man's gonna die or be seriously crippled, and they're gonna kill off Hank Pym and his wife. They have to show just how brutal Kang is. And I know they kind of let slip a little bit more about Quantumania. I know that Cassie's going to end up getting kidnapped. Stature rather is going to get kidnapped. And, kind of clever storytelling. He seems like he's evolved above his previous life. He's become an influencer and a successful author and podcaster and brand leader. When I say he, I mean Scott Lang / Ant-Man. But what does Kang have him do? Kang has him go and steal something because he knows about his past as a thief. But Kang's going to be extremely brutal. They have to set up very, very high bar and high stakes. Thanos established a pre-existing bar when it comes to big bads. They're going to have to transcend it. And then who transcends Kang? To me, nobody else does except for Mephisto. And since they're slowly building the roster for the Midnight Suns, he's got to come in sometime. So it was just the best that Madison, of all people, has to make a pact with him. I love her and Wong anyway, but that was just so classic. That's the best reveal for the worst big bad ever. I love it. So before I go any further, Mike says the character is more on the comedy side and she breaks the fourth wall. It's hard to show up everywhere. I also thought Fantastic Four, Daredevil, and Deadpool. And since you mentioned Deadpool, yeah, Deadpool breaks the fourth wall, but I think he's going to absolutely be everywhere too. And it's actually interesting that she broke the fourth wall before Deadpool ever did. So I love how Titania snipes nice suit Shrek. Judge Early, the way she handled this seemed a lot more realistic and true to form. Because again, I was a litigator for other firms for 17 and a half years. And I've been in and out of courts from Manhattan and the Bronx and like 7 other upstate county courts. I never really did local court, it was all county court. But in California, county court is more of a local court, so I have to be careful. In New York, it's like local courts, it's county court, it's appellate division, and then it's there's one more level above that, and then you have to go to the Supreme Court. Unless your case transcends state bounds, then it's federal court, and it could still go to the U.S. Supreme Court after that. Madison and Wongers are my new favorite couple. Oh my God. And I did a video for them that published the other day, and then I'm going to publish another video later on today that's pre-edited that also explains how not only is Mephisto confirmed, but my fears for what they're going to do to Madison, but how she can also help to usher in the Midnight Suns. They knew she was going to be a well-loved character by the way they introduced her in a trailer, where it's like Hulk, Abomination, Madison, and I was like, what the heck? So I did, and that video actually did pretty well. Like, who the heck is Madison? I guess some things right, I guessed other things wrong, but she is just delightful. I could not see too much of her. And I think they would be a really good couple, and they broke the internet. So the video that I already have up talks about how and why, and that the stinger scene involving them wasn't even scripted. That wasn't even supposed to be the stinger scene that went in there. That is the best. Oh, and by the way, I'll note really quickly, they were supposed to have a stinger scene for every single episode of She-Hulk, and they did not have one today, which makes me wonder, did they have to pull it the last minute because they're altering or changing things as we go into phases 5 and 6? Don't laugh, because what is it? Adam Coogler said he was still changing and tweaking and editing things for Wakanda Forever. And it's like September, mid-September when we're talking about this, and it's coming out like early November. So they can change and shapeshift stuff in and out. So Mallory Brooke does exactly the litigation plan that I think works. She says, we're not going to start our own lawsuit. We're going to countersue, Your Honor. And we filed a motion for summary judgment, not just to dismiss the complaint and say we don't owe her anything, but also we're seeking several different forms of relief, not the least of which is to nullify Titania's claim to the trademark, and then to also, as a separate cause of action, because you have to do these things in separate causes of actions or buckets. The courts don't like you to merge everything into one like omnibus massive cause of action. So, yes, they're going to dismiss the complaint. That's one cause of action. Next, they want Titania's rights to the trademark nullified. Next, they want Jennifer Walters to own the trademark of She-Hulk. One thing that didn't get mentioned here that I totally would have done as a litigator was to also say, there is another cause of action that says that any of the products that are currently out on the market need to be recalled and removed. Okay, would have totally done that too. That has to be a separate cause of action. And then I would have also piggybacked that out of any of the monies that Titania Worldwide pulled in so far from the then to be verboten use of the trademark, or the illegal, immoral, and ethical use of the trademark, I then would have said, hey, and my client deserves all that money. And then what you could have done was have a quick mediation where I probably would have counseled my client to accept half of the funds just to settle that cause of action out. But the judge could have probably very easily granted all the other causes of action, which she ends up doing. Of course, what the defense attorney did is not unusual. He would have stood up and made the argument, you know what, dismiss their motion to dismiss our complaint / their motion for summary judgment. It's a frivolous lawsuit. But he doesn't just say it's a frivolous lawsuit. He does have evidence to show why it could be successfully argued that this is a frivolous lawsuit. Mallory claims that there's no issues about here. And so we should have just a proceeding to either in-person trial, and it could have just been a bench trial with Judge Early. They could also file saying that they wanted a jury also. Sometimes it is not worth having a jury. The more complicated the claim, the less likely, no offense, lay people, you want 12 people in a box and they're all going to cluster over even understanding all the different causes of action. And especially when the average lay person just thinks, and they established it twice over, the first person who gets to the trademark wins. Not exactly. So, presumptively, yes, but it can be proven no. And it's not the hardest thing in the world to do, depending upon the evidence that you have. So, you have the defense attorney saying, nah, they don't have the right for their motion for summary judgment. They should get no trial, whether it's a bench trial with just you, Judge Early, a trial with a jury, or just go with the summary judgment motion, which is in and of itself a trial. So the argument is from Mallory, since the first public appearance of Jennifer Walters in her Hulk form, the public has unanimously identified her as the She-Hulk. They dubbed her as the She-Hulk. So, in fact, the name had not ever been recorded in public discourse until that first appearance. Now, this is something I would definitely do as a litigator on behalf of Jennifer Walters. I would do a public record search. I would search social media. I would search the internet. I have in the past, I don't have a patent bar, but I have in the past done searches for clientele. It's difficult, but it's not impossible, folks. I had a clear-cut case once where I took screenshot after screenshot on Google itself showing that a certain name wasn't being used ever, or there was nothing that Google had recorded. And then, like I said, you can go to these free government, the free government database to search to see if a trademark's ever been taken out. And if one's been taken out, is it active or has it expired? So it is possible to see that. And, She-Hulk, you had Hulk be a thing, but not She-Hulk be a thing. So then she entered into record more evidence. The newscasters stuff, where they not only dubbed her as the She-Hulk, but they were referring to her as She-Hulk. Now, they only showed you a quick little bit. She would have been submitting item after item. But people lie, the evidence doesn't. So it seems ridiculous to bring in a truckload of like every last possible screenshot and search and trademark search, and then all of the clips and the interviews and the shows. Remember, in previous episodes, She-Hulk came on for an interview. She was asked where the name came from. She gave her answer. We go call back to that in just a minute as a direct piece of evidence that gets replayed just in case you missed that episode. But remember, right after that, they call for a commercial break and say, when we come back, we'll find out about She-Hulk's exercise and fitness routine and diet routine. And she's like, what? Because that's a commentary on you could be a female public figure and you have nothing to do with diet and beauty. And for some reason, because you're female, they want to know these things. That was the particular interview that they do play back. Now, in order to maintain a lawsuit and to prevail over a motion to dismiss, or a motion for summary judgment, you do have to create a question of fact and say to the judge, no. We need to have a trial with or without a jury. We need to have a trial. Deny the motion to dismiss or the motion for summary judgment, because this isn't easily enough decided on paper through a trial on paper, or just dismiss my complaint and my client doesn't have any recourse. So you do have to say they've met their initial burden of proof. This is a legalese that comes out. In this case, defendant met their initial burden of proof. They showed plenty of evidence to the judge that said, we should be entitled to keep our motion And then part two, now that we've met our burden of proof, the other side's going to say whatever they're going to say, and then you're going to decide either for us or against us. So defense counsel doesn't make the argument that they haven't met their burden of proof, because that would be ridiculous. They have evidence and not just their allegations. And they have evidence that doesn't just include, as I said earlier, the self-serving testimony of their own witness. That by itself usually cannot win a case. However, you can have your witness testify and rely upon other external sources of evidence, like the screenshots that show that nobody was using She-Hulk before in public discourse before she came out as She-Hulk, and or relying upon the interviews and the newscasters and all of the footage naming her and discussing her as She-Hulk. So if she testified and she was relying on that on evidence, she might not have had the other non-party witnesses, and she could have still won. But if it's just her testimony and nothing else to support it, she'll usually lose. It's the same in New York as in California. People lie, the evidence doesn't. So plaintiff's counsel for Titania Worldwide says the defendant is exploiting the goodwill towards my client. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The defense counsel, Mallory Brooks, says Titania is exploiting the goodwill that the public has towards my client, and also her better known cousin, Bruce Banner, of course, the Hulk, in order to sell non-FDA approved sham products. So that's the first time we learn that there's no FDA approval, which actually shouldn't be shocking. It takes years to get that. I didn't do that sort of law transactionally, because there's a bevy of lawyers who can do that. But I have had products liability cases in the past. And so FDA approval, depending upon what it is critical. If you don't have it, it can be really bad. Anyway, I love how Mallory Brooks piggybacks and ties in She-Hulk's right to the name, pre-existing years before Titania filed her trademark. And then the trademark infringement claim against Jennifer Walters, and I guess later on GLK&H. Because once she ties those two periods of time together, and these are relatives, and they're both Hulks, you kind of can't say Hulk or She-Hulk, and you kind of can't say it just came around and 2 weeks later I filed a trademark for it. So that's really good nuanced lawyering. But because Hulk isn't around, he can't come in and testify. However, because he has been so part of the public discourse, they know who he is. They know what the name Hulk means. Judges can be asked to take judicial notice of certain things that exist and don't need to otherwise be officially brought into evidence. Public records, things that you can get through a FOIL or a FOIA search might count. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It definitely counts. So you don't have to go crazy officially getting documents certified and approved to bring in front of a judge for a motion for summary judgment or an in-person trial. There are other things that become just so accepted as fact, like humans need oxygen to breathe. We don't have to go crazy proving that to a judge. We don't need a bevy of like physical and or digital evidence to prove it. While Mallory Brooks did not utter the legalese words that you should on the record to ask the judge to take judicial notice of the existence of the Hulk, and he's Bruce Banner, and now we've established that he is Jennifer Walters' cousin. Other than that, I think what she did was pitch perfect for real life. So then she goes, we ask the court to grant our motion for summary judgment. Remember, it's not just a motion to dismiss, because they're not just looking to flick away the complaint against Jennifer and her firm. They're asking for additional forms of relief as a plaintiff. So summary judgment is the right application. And then she asked the judge from the bench to grant the remedies. It is possible you should not have the hearing, even with folks introducing stuff into evidence as they go. because a lot can and should be done with the motion for summary judgment itself. At a hearing, you can go back and unpack more or showcase more during what's called oral arguments on any motion practice, motion to dismiss, a motion to compel, which doesn't come into the situation here. Who knows next time what'll happen, but a motion for summary judgment. You do typically have oral arguments unless the parties otherwise stipulate that they don't want them, which they can, and judges are delighted because that's less time. It's easier to just get to the meat and potatoes of the motion and make the decision. Judges can issue decisions in whole or in part from the bench. Judge Early could have said, after everything was officially introduced into evidence, she's already got the papers in advance of the hearing. Of course, she's read through the papers and any evidence they've supported before the hearing, or how is she going to have an intelligent hearing? She could have said, I will grant or deny everyone's applications, or she could grant or deny certain parts of things. It gets put on the record. They can appeal that stuff or not, and then they proceed to trial in person, or I'll give you a written decision on the rest. It'll, of course, reiterate anything I've decided from the bench. But Judge Early does say later that she's going to reserve her decision, and that Jennifer and Mallory Brooke have to come forward with some more evidence. And I do agree with why. We'll get to there in a second. Titania brings up the point that she's got thousands of customers by now, and I'm sure she could prove it. She's got thousands of testimonials. That's out on social media. And if she's got a website and she's smart, she put them there too. And so, she does make the point. I have been using this trademark. I didn't just get it and sit in outer space with it. It's out in public discourse too. And the public is accepting my use of it. So I'm doubling down. I didn't just jump to the head of the line and get the trademark first. I'm actively using it. Okay. But then ridiculously, she wants to submit a piece of proof into evidence. Unlike the judge from the last episode, who kind of got swayed by Donnie Blaze and Cornelius Willows, and the attorney who also was a magician, and they have the cute bunny and all the smoke and mirrors, Judge Early's having none of the nonsense. She's more like a real life judge. And so, very smart, Titania's attorney then goes and establishes evidence that proves that She-Hulk, said to the camera, to the news, that, at least in one piece of footage, that she said she's not interested in the name. That's not how I want to be known as. I want to be known as Jennifer Walters. She might have been aggravated and said it because she was tired or whatever, but we also know, if we've watched all the episodes up until now, Jennifer's character arc, again, isn't struggling with the powers. It's struggling with merging the two identities and being okay with that. That's very nuanced storytelling. It's not just boom, 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 fight, fight, fight. Oh, I hate myself. I'm scared of myself as the Hulk. The critics are like, she doesn't seem to be really having a struggle. She is. It's nuanced. So this is very intelligent story crafting, and it's also showing that people either are lawyers or they've had legal consultants. Because this has also been the theme the entire time. She's struggling with her identity, and it's also good story crafting. This isn't some two-dimensional court thing, and the lay people are entertained by something shiny. They're really layering in nuances there for anyone who works in the legal field, because we can buy it too. Judge Early asks for a response, and Miss Brooks is prepared, as any litigator should be, because if she had nothing more, Jennifer's saying she doesn't want the name. So why would she want the trademark? It is one piece of evidence versus how many other pieces that they've already established, but quantity versus quality here, right? So Judge Early is entitled to say, I need a little more before I could possibly rule in your favor. So they did show the clip that I referred to before, where before they went on a commercial break and they were going to come back and talk about Jennifer's workout routine. So dopey. They did ask her, the interviewer asked her how she came up with the name She-Hulk. She said some random guy in the news came up with it but it stuck. So now, whether I like it or not, I am forever She-Hulk. And she kind of has a self-effacing grin on it, showing, at this point, I have to just, I'm going with it. So this is an excellent judge. The judge acknowledges that this is probative, but it's just one incident. She's like, can you prove an established pattern on behalf of Miss Walters' personal use and or otherwise continued use of the She-Hulk name? So Mallory Brooks says, yes, we do, but we have to bring that in. You want more. And the judge could have said, nah, everything was due today. But because of how everything was playing out, it is not unusual for a judge to adjourn and to give everybody a second bite at the apple. And also the judge does warn her, both sides have good arguments, but as I sit here right now, if you don't bring in anything more, I might be so inclined to rule with Titania. To be honest with you, that's something judges do too. They are allowed to show their slip and say where they're leaning. But if they're giving you an opportunity to come back in and argue another way, that's kosher. That's fine. So I love how Titania looks at Jennifer and she's doing this like throat cutting motion. Jeez. So we go on to another scene. We're back in the creepy elevator. Nikki and She-Hulk are there together. The hereto unforeseen guy is going to let them in for their consultation. And that's when Nikki confesses to She-Hulk, I maybe told him you're an Avenger. And they're totally Easter egging the fact that later on down the line, probably well into phase 5, if not phase 6, as we get Avengers back again, phase 5 is going to be about like building into the Thunderbolts. We're probably also going to be building more into the Young Avengers, more than we have already. But by phase 6, we're definitely getting Avengers back. But this is Easter egging, not only that we're getting Avengers back, but the fact that, we're not only doing a nod and a wink to the character arc for She-Hulk in the comics, but that she's going to be part of the Avengers, whether it's full-time or part-time, once we get Avengers back. So I love how Luke comes in and he's negging her. He wants her business, but he's like negging her to make her want his services more. It's kind of like rejection is the best aphrodisiac. This happens, not just in the fashion world. He's like, oh my God, is the Hag convention in town? His name is Luke. And Nikki Ramos says, this is the She-Hulk. Has Jennifer learned her lesson yet, especially after sitting in court and she's fighting to nullify Titania's rights to the trademark, but similarly, she's fighting against it still. No, I'm just Jennifer Walters. And the way he goes at it, Luke, where he's asking her for her needs for her suits, her superhero suits and stuff, sounds like that little lady that did the design work for The Incredibles. Remember that movie? Do you need fire resistance? Do you need waterproofing? Any sort of special weaponry? Like, what kind of superheroing do you do? Because I'm going to tailor my work to that. That's kind of cool, and it shows that the guy knows what he's doing. It's also kind of a good callback to The Incredibles themselves. But Jennifer's still not learning. She's still kind of in her struggle with her identity and says, I just need, a suit that's going to fit my needs because I'm a lawyer. And Luke goes to throw them out because he's like, this isn't a challenge and I don't just make regular suits. Get out of here. Second Street Marvel, what is going on? Good morning. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm here lurking in the meantime. No offense, you want to circle back because I went through all of the legal recourses, the motion to dismiss becomes a motion for summary judgment, and first to the apple is not a guarantor of owning a trademark. I really love how they're handling things. But everybody say hi to Trinity because he's here. And if you haven't subscribed to Second Street Marvel, I love his breakdowns. I really do. You should really go and, check him out too if you haven't already. I know Mike has. So Mike's saying, hey, Trinity. All right. So Nikki is very smart. She thinks on her feet. She's a paralegal, but this is what any good lawyer should do. She's like, hey, she changes size and shape. That's your challenge to create, suits for her, superhero, quarter, both, that can manage the whole shape-shifting thing. So she makes her do it, and Luke's like, fine, I'll take on that challenge. That's worthy of my talents. So the next scene change, we're back at the law office. Mallory is all stunning in a black and white number that is very tasteful for an otherwise very conservative, corporate culture. Nikki makes the point that that's kind of how you rock a professional look, but still have respect for yourself. But then you have the creepo guy that we all knew was going to come back into play. His name is Todd. He's one of the 4 dates that Jennifer had in her She-Hulk incarnation. He was all fixated on her special powers and whether or not her skin was invulnerable. My guess and the guess of a lot of people is that he might be working on behalf of the leader. He might be in charge of the wrecking crew behind the scenes. He does identify himself as a big client on behalf of GLK&H, which personally and or professionally can lead to a lot of complications throughout the rest of the series, which I love because, again, as I was saying earlier, legal wise and otherwise, there's a lot of complicated and nuanced storytelling going on. So I love how Jennifer is sniping quietly to Nikki about how Todd is creepy, disgusting, monstrous. Oh, hi. And so Todd says that they should reconnect soon. Jennifer's making nice. Yes, absolutely. Drinks on me. Meanwhile, Mallory's like, whatever, guys, bye. We go into, and he becomes important to her winning the case, but that still doesn't mean, it could be a misdirect, that he still wants to get together with her socially, that he shows up as a non-party witness to testify on behalf of Jennifer. He's very helpful. To be fair, all 4 of her dates in her She-Hulk form are very helpful to her, but I think it's a misdirect. He's not the leader because the original actor, whose name is going to escape me right now, confirmed that he's coming back and that the leader is going to be the big bad, or at least a big bad, for Captain America 4 New World Order, which I'm glad. The leader obviously thinks that he should be the leader of the whole known world. Mike says you should check out Second Street Marvel's Friday night show live at the trailer park. It's an education, definitely a late night show. Oh my goodness. Might be a little bit saltier than what I do maybe then. But you definitely should. I love Second Street Marvel's breakdowns and theories about everything. He had me at the Jade Emerald tablet back in with the Eternals and Mercari stealing the tablet and what it means. And then he had a recently, right, about like feminism and how it shows up in Marvel. Very, very high functioning stuff. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. People can spot Easter eggs all day and that's fun. But when you have the nuanced stuff, I'm good for the legal stuff. I've been a lawyer since 1998 and I've been a comic book fan since 1986. So you're getting kind of like the best of both worlds here for stuff like She-Hulk. But I do think, like with Daredevil, I'm going to go back and unpack stuff that he's done in the past. And of course, when New World Order comes out, I'll be all over that. But folks like Second Street Marvel, okay, the Trailer Park Fridays are fun, but like he really has some very high functioning stuff that just you don't get just everywhere. So I really appreciate that. So now we've got a scene change. The ladies are eating outside the law office, getting some fresh air, and they're talking. And, the guy's bragging that he had a date with the She-Hulk, which, yeah, he was doing. He wasn't completely tasteless about it, but he did call back to it. And then Jennifer very rightly goes, oh my God, he said he had a date with the She-Hulk, not Jennifer Walters. Match her to the rescue for the motion for summary judgment, because as she tells Mallory Brooke later, and she tells Nikki now, remember, I made a dating profile as She-Hulk, and I went out on several dates as She-Hulk, showing a clear pattern of the usage of the name personally, and then all the GLK&H like trailers that you saw, the commercial that you saw in one of the trailers and all All of this is layering back in and becoming more important, at least for this episode, at least for this claim, that will all jointly help her in her motion for summary judgment to dismiss on her behalf, and then GLK and H's behalf as well, to dismiss Titania's claims against them as Titania Worldwide LLC. So once you show that clear pattern in the name, you have those 4 guys come back as non-party witnesses and they testify at the next hearing / trial, then she can win. Because she's right, every single one of those dates is a corroborating witness, and they are how she wins the case. Of course, Nikki snipes at her by parading all of the questionable men you've dated out in front of a courtroom. So we're back in court, and that's exactly what they do. Titania, by the way, is now officially ridiculous. She had hints of green and stuff before, but now, this is like the make it or break it. The judge may make all of her decisions here or most of her decisions here. So she's got a cape on, which is ridiculous enough for a courtroom. I don't even know how they allowed her to have it. But she also is all in green. She looks like a big green Oompa Loompa. I can't even believe it. And Oompa Loompas are supposed to be short. Second Street Marvel says, Mike Porter, it can be fun on the rated R side. So, Second Street Marvel, you could legitimately say that you're like the Deadpool of Marvel theorists. Because I definitely do my best to keep it PG. Not that there's anything wrong with either rating, but... I love Deadpool. Oh my God. I can't even tell you how many times I saw just Deadpool, the original movie, let alone the second one. Okay. So she thinks she's going to sway the judge with all of the green that she's wearing. Most judges would never fall victim for that. I really do have to tell you. So then Mallory Brooks says that they've come with compelling evidence that She-Hulk did self-identify and actively use the name, the moniker She-Hulk, long before Titania filed for the trademark. So again, as I established earlier, first to the table doesn't automatically keep the trademark. You can legit gut it. And someone can lose their entitlement for it. Not the easiest gauntlet to run, though. So again, Mallory clearly shows the judge that Titania is a shill. First of all, just look at her. It's ridiculous. But second of all, she's using the She-Hulk name really only to just exploit product. It's not a genuine part of her identity, and her branding otherwise has nothing to do with anything other than just piggybacking off a trend. Mike says, on a date, you can call anybody anything. I'm surprised it stuck. I guess the 4 helped in the fact that the hookup only wanted She-Hulk close the case. It did, and at least he was honest about it, which kind of still shows that he's a good guy. His proclivities just were what they were, and he liked She-Hulk, but Jennifer Walters kind of just soured him because obviously it's a package deal. And at least he wasn't ever going to sit there and say to Jennifer, could you just stay in She-Hulk form for me? Kind of got to give him credit for that. I don't think he should have run out of there and left a trail of frigging, flaming skid marks behind him in episode 4, but whatever. What do I know? All right. I'm not a dude. But she did, you know what though, Mike, she did create the actual profile that said She-Hulk, identified as She-Hulk. And when they put it up on the screen to again show the judge, that's where you get the call back to the name of the episode, Mean Green and Straight Poured into These Jeans. And so, of course, we make a joke about what Jennifer's looking for in a partner, which is a sturdy back and a steel reinforced king-size bed. Good Lord. But all the witnesses are called. They all wave at her, showing goodwill. Mike says Trinity mainly uses his channel to promote independent comics, which I think is important too. What was the brand that he talked about recently that came out? And he was talking about it. They just launched it. Oh, they were in the news, and now I'm blanking out on them. But like Dark Horse used to be a really good independent comic. Like they used to have like a whole bunch of like I'm going to blank out on it. It's been a number of years since I really looked at independent comics. ElfQuest was a really good independent comic that I liked. And then Marvel bought the rights to it and did a run with it as well. And interestingly enough, the Peonies who created ElfQuest and still own all the rights to them now, I don't think Marvel owns the rights to them anymore. They did for that run and for a period of time afterwards. They live in my county, of all things. So, Weightlifter Date comes back. They kind of do them in order too. Weightlifter Date's like, sup, She's like, it's me, the real She-Hulk. She was a tryhard, and I'm not about that, which is really funny because each of these witnesses, yes, they favor her, but like as most of us tend to do, we're always kind of giving ourselves the best credit. We're always trying to establish that like we're the good guy or the good girl no matter what. So he's like, well, I'm not still with her because she was a tryhard because she said she could lift a literal ton. Date number 2 says, I specifically remember herself referring to herself as She-Hulk on the date, not just with the profile, obviously. And he goes, but she referred to herself as She-Hulk in the third person. And as a writer myself, I found that grating. So, of course, deadlifter guy is trying to be like, I'm so who, look at me. But yeah, I'll help her. The writer guy's like, I'm a writer. Like, we all need to know about that. It's not important or germane to this case or the defense of it or the prosecution of the motion for summary judgment. But he's got to just drop that little bit about himself in there. He's the same goofball that was just like, ooh, my lawyer character practiced constitutional law, and that's how he became, lawyer to the vice president of the United States of America. And it's like, con law is first-year lawyer stuff. For those of us who know, like, that's not enough to go be. That's not going to make you special enough that you're now going to be counsel to the vice president. It takes a whole lot more than that. Date number 3 comes up. That, of course, is Todd, who I think is still going to factor in throughout the rest of the series. He was very tasteful. He said she confided in me that she was initially embarrassed by the name She-Hulk, but then she embraced it. That's the beautiful part. I guess I would be the kind of guy that she would really open up to. So, of course, now he's given himself on a pat on the back, too. Why did Todd do this, and why did he give a little extra zinger in there that initially she was embarrassed, but then she was otherwise fine with it? I don't think that was a mistake. I think that's good lawyering on the part of Mallory Brooke, that she got him to kind of nullify the main piece of evidence that Titania's counsel brought up, that they were legit to bring it up. Jennifer was like, nah, I'm not She-Hulk. I'm just Jennifer Walters. You have to have at least one of the non-party witnesses kind of give the other side a black eye. So Todd did it. I don't think it's a mistake that it was Todd because he's a big client of GLK&H. He has a relationship with them. So, you don't ever want to encourage your own party witness or a non-party witness who might be favorable to your client to lie. But if you kind of like ask them questions to be like, was she struggling with that identity? Or did she say that she used to during that date? It's okay to ask that leading question. They're not on a witness stand while you're prepping them. And if they deliver you the goods, that's great. So Mallory probably could have had a much deeper conversation with Todd because she was the lead attorney on all the business that he's apparently brought to her. Let me know in the comments down below what kind of business you think he was bringing to Mallory, right? Because I'm very curious. They do not give you a poker's tell, I don't think, in terms of what business he's bringing to her. Does he need, because she's clearly a member of the patent bar, is he going to get tech patented with her? Could be. So that kind of piggybacks on what Mike and I were discussing earlier. Is it trademark stuff? Is it copyright stuff, right? And you'll notice he's wearing a green shirt and a green scarf too, in a much more downplayed, understated way than Titania, who looks like the color emerald green from the Crayola crayon box vomited all over her. So he really gives the payoff that the judge needs to hear. that yes, the other side has this piece of evidence showing that she was kind of rejecting the name, but by the time she's gone out on a date with Todd, she's accepted it, at least most of the way. Date number 4 was the pediatric oncologist. He was a very useful character witness, talking about how they had, yeah, sure, they had a really intense connection. They had a great date. She's a wonderful person. He was very nice and flattering. But he does establish that she was a She-Hulk on that date. Mallory gives kind of like the money shot question to him. So Todd helped her with one thing, giving the opposing side the black eye with the one useful piece of evidence they have. But Mallory does the best thing that any litigator, including myself, would do. Once you've diffused the other side's argument, you drive home your point, which she does with the pediatric oncologist. She says, would you have gone on the date if She-Hulk had instead presented as Jennifer Walters? Very tastefully, very kindly, he says, I don't mean to be rude, but no, because Jennifer Walters herself is not my type. But She-Hulk, she's incredible. She's amazing. And you could tell from the way he testified and held himself, he's still into She-Hulk, just not Jennifer Walters. Judge Early takes all of this in, and yes, you can get decisions in whole or in part from the bench. She says, in light of this new testimony, the court finds in favor of Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk. So not only do you get summary judgment granted, meaning the opposing side's complaint, cross-complaint, however it showed up, gets dismissed. And so GLK and H is left off the hook too. So Mallory's helping her firm and not just Jennifer, of course. There's other relief that's granted too. So Titania and her subsidiaries not only lose the rights to that trademark, and then I'm very sure Mallory Brooke is going to jump in and close anybody else off and get Jennifer the trademark later. The judge can't just hand the trademark, by the way, to Jennifer Walters, unless she put in an application along the way. And yet another cause of action would be like, not only do you in cause of action number 1 dismiss the complaint and grant a summary judgment, cause of action number 2, you nullify Titania's use of the trademark, then cause of action number 3, we already have an application and grant it to us. I think given the timing, they did not have enough time to make an application. Plus, if you already have somebody who is a trademark holder, that's not the best thing to do, but you could try to skate it in and say, by the way, judge, allow us to move forward with our application. We already have it on tap. That you could do. They didn't say that here. But the judge also ordered Titania to cease usage of the She-Hulk name effective immediately. And she adds that all current products on the market must be recalled. Other than the other thing where maybe I would have skated in an application and said, and judge, now allow for this application to go forward, to kind of do a hurry up offense, but that's okay. The other thing I would have sought for is, and yet another cause of action would have been, hey, and out of all the profits and the proceeds from the sales of any of the products before the recall, my client's entitled to all of it. And then maybe you settle out for 50-50 so that the other side doesn't appeal. That would have been the rest of my litigation plan. But up until now, Mallory Brooke nailed it. And this is very, very much how like this stuff would have gone forward in court. And I love how like Titania is storming out because she's pissed. Of course, weightlifter bro is already stepping to her. And pediatric oncologist guy does give She-Hulk a final look and a very gentle smile. So again, like some people were wondering if he was a plant. I don't know. I think that anything can happen, but I think he really just liked She-Hulk, but was turned off enough by Jennifer Walters that he just couldn't make it work. So now they're leaving the courthouse, and Mallory shows that she's not all bad after all. Like I said earlier, I discussed law office dynamics and how, honestly, understanding them, I found Mallory off the jump to be more sympathetic because She-Hulk just pole vaulted over her to get the corner office and to lead this team when it's kind of clear Mallory had kind of been doing that and had certainly been at the firm longer than Jennifer. and she'd been passed over. And I mean, you have to be a really good human to be able to separate that out and not punish somebody for that, because it's not like it's Jennifer's fault. Jennifer didn't know her or try to get Holden Holloway to pass her over. So she was kind of mean in the beginning, but here she's kind of softening up, which is cool. It's human nature. Said, look, Walters, what that extremely attractive man said, the pediatric oncologist, you can do better. You deserve better. She even lets Jen buy her a drink to say thank you. So at the bar, they're toasting. You can tell the walls are starting to come down a bit. In the comic book saga, though, Mallory Brooks still remains kind of like an adversary to Jennifer on a professional level. And again, that's not unusual given the dynamics that we discussed earlier. Of course, Mallory is kind of like giving her a backhanded compliment by saying, I don't know any other lawyer who would humiliate themselves to win the case. Jennifer wasn't just doing that for herself. Her boss said, our firm is on the line too, because I guess Titania hit them up with a lawsuit as well. But in an omnibus fashion, it would all get thrown out, right? So, Jennifer was protecting her job and her department and her firm. And Jennifer, of course, is very self-effacing and says, you can always count on me to throw myself under the bus. That's why Holloway throws me the medium bucks. So why did she say the thing about Holloway and the medium bucks? She has a nice corner office. I'm sure she's being paid well, but she's kind of trying to offer Mallory Brooke an olive branch, which I could totally see cohorts do in a law office situation, to say, I may have the corner office, but I don't get all the pay that you think I do. Jennifer's not stupid. Mallory Brooke has the right to kind of be pissy that like she's on Jennifer's team and not vice versa. And Mallory shows that she's pretty tasteful too. She says Holloway's never had to go through something like this. He's never had to date a parade of underwhelming men. You can have literal superpowers, and some guy with an internet connection can still think he can do better. And that's women being supportive of other women. I dated quite a few people before my husband many, many years ago. And I could tell you, I could be an attorney and someone would show me off to their family saying I'm dating a lawyer, but then otherwise just be all about themselves. So I'm just giving them more panache and flair because I'm a lawyer, because I'm professional. And of course that would turn me off and the relationship wouldn't go too much further, right? So they laugh. It's all cheery. Jen's like saying, I'm so happy we're friends now. She kind of presumed a little bit much. And like I said in the comic book saga, they were not besties. But Mallory thanks her for the drink and then says, I thought you were getting better clothes, and leaves. So then we have the fourth wall break. Oh yeah, so let's go close the loop on that. My clothes. So back in the salon, Luke is there. And she's like getting her suits. He's making her try them on. She's in the changing room, so we don't see what she's changing into. We do know that, if you've seen the trailers, they've shown that she's got her comic book accurate, or a version of her comic book accurate costume. And so this is clearly the guy who's going to create that for her. She goes, I like it. And he goes, of course you do, because I'm a genius. So she's trying the stuff on, and in the meantime, he's kind of roving about, and he picks up something and scolds his assistant, who we don't see on camera. And he's like, come on, our clientele's privacy needs to be protected. And he moves off, but you see what's inside, and it's the gold suit from the Silver Age costume of Daredevil. So we know that Daredevil's probably coming because he puts the lid on it that says for pickup. So you know that anytime now Daredevil's going to come in, we have 4 more episodes. He's got to come in at some point, right? So you have the Easter egg doing the Poker's Tell. Tune in next time. Here comes Daredevil. And then during the credits, some of the credits images stay static from episode to episode, and some they change out. So you do see the Iron Man 3s being showcased by Pug in the credits. So it's a reiteration of the previous Easter egg. And I've said this before in lives and other pre-edited videos. Iron Man's coming back. They're going to eventually bring the Avengers back, and some version of Iron Man really needs to either lead the team or be a significant part of the team. To me, it is just hard. You let me know how you feel in the comments down below in the live or the replay. It's hard to have Avengers without Iron Man, okay? And they have killed him off, or he's gone into phases of dead, or whatever. Before, lots of comic book characters too. I love Colossus, and they killed him off at least twice, right? So, and then now he's back again, on Krakoa. So why not? So Iron Man's definitely coming back. They have heavily, with pretty much every episode, laid down Easter eggs about it. I love the Say My Name song that's playing as the credits roll. You do see her cousin selling all of his bootleg stuff off the back of the truck. But interestingly enough, they do show Holden Holloway drinking the booty boost. And I like this not just because it's funny, but I like it because it shows that even older attorneys and or partners, they have lives too, and they wonder about things too. So he may not be doing all the things that the young kids are doing, like when she and Megan Thee Stallion were like twerking in her office, and he came by and he was like, and he left, but still, he may not twerk, but he'll try the booty juice, which also is funny because it shows that the billboard and the content marketing still worked, and it still worked on someone who is not Titania's ideal customer. So this is not the last that we've seen of Titania, and if you've seen any of the other trailer footage, she's coming back. She's going to come back and be part of the whole Abomination I'm a life coach thing, which I think is going to be hysterical. So what loop did I want to close? Anybody on the live remember? I think I've closed all my loops. I will also say another piece of another cause of action I would have tacked on if I were Mallory Brooke would be a separate cause of action asking for a bill of costs so that Titania could pay all the lawyers' fees. Because sure, she's doing this work for free for Jennifer Walters as a coworker and to protect the interests of the firm. But whether that was the case or not, I would always ask for a bill of costs to get my clients' filing fees and attorney's fees back. Depending upon the decision that's made on a case and the facts and circumstances of the case, winner can get a bill of costs. They may or may not include attorney's fees. Mike says, I think you covered it all. Okay, I didn't want to leave an open loop. Let me just look through my notes. Does anybody have any questions for me while I'm live? Remember, I can't give legal advice, but I can do legal issue spotting. I have to be careful. There's a case called Togstad v. Halstead that went up to the Supreme Court. And it was like, you can kind of have cocktail, party kind of discussions, but once you start to give advice that's specific to somebody else's facts and circumstances that comes and picks your brain, you could, not always, but you could be held responsible. So you have to be careful. You have to be held responsible if they rely on your advice to their detriment. I'm just looking over my notes. You guys can ask me what you like. I am going to post another video later on today that talks about Mephisto's introduction and how I think he ties into the Midnight Suns, because they've already introduced a couple members of that team, and then Werewolf by Night is giving us 3 more. So I think the Midnight Suns is definitely going to be a thing before we even get Wolverine was on that team also. They have given you Easter eggs in this series about Wolverine before. What was it, episode 1 or 2? And I do think that they will slowly but surely introduce more and more mutants into the MCU, but X-Men themselves might not be a thing on Earth 616 until we get closer into phase 6. Phase 5 is going to be building into and ending with the Thunderbolts. So I know we are not likely to get Avengers back until after that, because then that becomes kind of clashy. I have heard rumors that the Contessa might actually herself be the Red Hulk, which I think would be hilarious. We went through all the knockoffs and how Titania is better than Jennifer's cousin and also better than the guy selling total just shameless bootleg. Funny, funny. Oh my goodness. This was such a well done episode in terms of not only the story crafting within the episode and then pulling all the threads all the way back from episode 1, moving Jennifer along in her character arc. We still haven't seen a total resolution yet. And Titania is her enemy, but it's not just this that we're getting. And I have to be honest with you, to me, this feels a lot more like real life. I know some people wish that they'd always just wreck every courtroom, but they're not going to do it. Mike says, I personally enjoy the joy, but I understand why this is not hitting everyone. I just enjoy it for what it is, and I'm not questioning everything on how this is involved in the MCU. I think a lot of people need to. I think I closed all my loops. I think if I missed it, you guys, let me know. If there's a loop that I opened or something that I started to explain and I didn't finish it, you can put it in the comments down below on the replay. Listen, I think people need to just simply be content consumers, be it on Disney Plus or in the movies or what have you, and to enjoy the ride. I think, who tends to be more patient? I'm painting with a broad brushstroke. You guys tell me what you think. I think that you get the comic book lovers who are patient because we kind of understand where they're going and we kind of really appreciate that. And the original people working on the Iron Man with Robert Downey Jr. on up, I think that because Kevin Feige was in there and they were all comic book writers, fans, or artists that were on the panel giving information from the start. But they didn't know how successful everything was going to be kicking off with Iron Man yet. A lot of stuff that Fox did that sucked. And I hate what they did with New Mutants. Oh my God. I feel like doing a separate video just about that. I love those comics. Love them. I became a fan with Uncanny X-Men in 1986. But I very quickly got into New Mutants because, Magic is Colossus's sister. But I loved that storytelling. And the characters they picked were great for those parts. I think they nailed their parts. They just had schlock for a storyline. And I know that there were a lot of delays and that didn't help. I am so mad because I would like to see every single one of the people who were in that movie as the New Mutants come back. They just wait till they actually get a good storyline. I also like Cloak and Dagger, but I didn't like how, Freeform? I didn't hate what Freeform did with them. Didn't really love it either. And so I would like to see the 2 stars from that. They'll be older by the time, if they are worked into the MCU, they will be older, but those characters work older. They don't have to be teenagers. And you can still have that love dynamic with them there. And Easter egg of all Easter eggs, in one of the original printings from the full-blown series that Cloak and Dagger got, I wrote as a young girl, I think I was a tween, I wrote a letter into Marvel and they put my letter in there and Stanley answered it. And yes, I still have that comic. So, true story. Hey, Rami, what's going on? Mike says, although it's comedy, there's still a lot of Easter eggs in the show. Absolutely. They want to tell all different types of stories. They've been doing such a huge overarching story and plan. And Rami, I'm going to get to you in a minute. But I'm telling you, they have the right to tell different. It shouldn't all be the same flavor of storytelling. Ice cream. I think when you're the creator, you fatigue on that. And they can draw in different fans of different genres and have them join the jamboree of the MCU. Again, I think comic book enthusiasts understand the big pattern of the universe. And I agree with Rob from Comic Books Explained. He said this more than once. I love him as a theorist. Oh my goodness. When it comes to breaking down the comic book sagas themselves, oh my God, he's so good. But he said, I'm not mad that they're keeping a lot of the kernels and the frameworks, but they're still twisting and taking things in different directions. I don't want to know every payoff. He's like, I'm happy that they're innovating the way they're innovating, but they're still keeping the foundation. Because I want to be surprised. I want to be delighted, which again is why I don't think they revealed Baron Zemo for the Thunderbolts. But I also think when they come out with the Werewolf by Night, what is it? It's a one-off, right? So it's not even a series. It's just one like episode or show. That's going to be true horror. It's going to be done grindhouse style, like from the 70s and 80s, but it's going to be true horror. And I really don't think, I mean, yeah, you had Sam Raimi and you had Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and that's campy horror. And yes, Werewolf by Night looks like it's also going to be campy horror, but I think it's going to be a different, darker flavor of horror. And I also agree with Rob from Comics Explained. He says, y'all are complaining about how lighthearted Phase 4 is overall. I mean, we know Wakanda Forever is going to be a cry fest. And but up until now, there's been table setting, new characters introduced. We're deep diving on them. Some of it's comedy, like Miss Marvel had comedic angles to it. She-Hulk definitely does. And everyone's like, where's all the fighting and the depths and the darkness? And he's like, you're gonna get it, because Wakanda Forever aside, we'll go back into lighthearted, I'm sure, for all or most of Guardians of the Galaxy, the holiday edition. But then after that, they're going to start off savage. I've already predicted it. It does follow a lot of the footprint of the comic book saga pre-MCU. They're going to either kill off a lot of Team Ant-Man or they're going to maim some and kill others, because they really have to establish Kang as a different, nastier threat. He needs to transcend the bar that Thanos established. So honestly, Phase 4 is good for what it does. Mike and I agree with each other. Yes, that I'm telling you, I swear, Stan Lee himself did answer my question. He was goofy about answering it, but I loved it. It had to do with milk and cookies, because I was like, how could they kill off one of the pair of Cloak and Dagger? It's like having cookies without the milk. What a tween would probably write. By the time they published his response to my question, they'd already brought back, the character that had died off. So obviously there's a bit of a time delay, but I was so honored that he did it. I'll have to find because I have the comic in storage. I'll have to pull it out. So to give Rami credit, he says, above all else, this show feels like it's being crafted towards Jennifer's self-discovery and confidence. Agreed. Hopefully ultimately leading her to becoming capable of a much larger role in the cosmos. And so far they're nailing it. I agree. And this is definitely a conversation that Rami and I have had in past episodes or past live stream reactions. You definitely have to go back because he's very smart at what he catches. And like we agreed, and I think even Mike was there for some of this, it's not all beat him up, beat him up, beat him up. So some people were like, Jen's not fighting enough in this series, or she's not struggling with her powers. This isn't Fear and Loathing and stuff like that, like Bruce Banner had. Well, Bruce didn't have a relative to show him the way, and they were very clearly close. So they shared a lot of things along the way. And even later, you have Morris, her father, say, but our family's been through this before. So obviously, even though Morris isn't Bruce's father, I guess he's related to Bruce's parents. It's like we've handled this as a family before and we're doing it again. So it is more nuanced storytelling. It's a different kind of character arc. You can't have them all be the same. In fact, like the writers were trying to warn you that they want to avoid at least some of the superhero tropes, when Jennifer was saying to Nikki in the legalese bar, she's talking about how, like, I couldn't be a superhero. That's for, orphans and billionaires and stuff like that. So it's like, I'm not fitting in those tropes, and my story and my character arc is not going to be, Tony Stark or Tony Stark light, or, Captain America or Captain America Light. Thank God, because it would get boring after a while. So Rob's already said in one of his more recent comic books explained videos, I think he did it there, or was it Geek Culture Explained? Geek Culture Explained. Let me give his, let's see, it's not Comics Explained, it's Geek Culture Explained. He said things are about to get dark on the thumbnail, and he said we need to talk about Secret Invasion. Yeah, because Wakanda Forever aside, and I don't know if prior to the death of Chadwick Boseman it was going to be as dark and as sad as it's clearly going to be post his passing. Secret Wars is gonna, I'm sorry, Secret Invasion is going to be extremely paranoid and deep and upsetting. So Rob's advice to us as viewers and content consumers is, what? Enjoy it while you can, because I think we're about to have Phase 5 start off with a vicious, violent bang with Quantumania and Secret Invasion. It's going to be really dark, very paranoid, and very upsetting. They have to, because otherwise you're going to be used to everything that came from phases 1, 2, and 3. And they can't always keep it super light or a lot of table setting. You will need more traction. So it's about to get a whole lot worse. So that's it. I've been going on for over 2 hours, enjoying myself and everybody's company as per usual. Thank you so much for joining me both live and on the replay. I will have another edited video come out later on today, and I do plan on having at least another 2 ones come out during the week. One of the things about being a busy mother and lawyer is you don't, and I'm a content marketing coach on the Stacey Storino channel. So, I have a couple of businesses and things to run. I do want to get to be more regular, where I have content coming on this channel 5 days a week, if not 7. So thank you guys for coming. Thank you for your input. Make sure you share me out, shout me out. That really helps more than you think. And I'm really appreciative of it. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye.